One.
All righty, we're going to call together, we're going to open our April 7th, 2021 hearing of the Milton Board of Appeals. The first application before us is the application of John and Tammy Carpenter. The application is dated February 24th, 2021, and seeks a variance pursuant to section 6C1 of the Milton bylaw. That's the side yard setback. The applicants are proposing to build a 16 by 17 open deck addition to the rear of their property, which is located at 135 Harborview Road in Milton. The property lies in a Residence B zoning district, and this particular residence was built in approximately 1961 as a single-family home and currently conforms with the zoning bylaw with respect to use and dimensions. The applicants have filed a plot plan which shows the proposed deck to be built at a distance of 10 feet 6 inches from the left side lot line, when 12 feet are normally required under section 6C1 of the bylaw. My name is John Leonard. I'm chairman of the Board of Appeals. With me this evening, Board of Appeals members Frank O'Brien and Nick Gray. The rules of the board are such that we'll first hear from the applicant. We'll hear from any person present who wishes to ask the questions of the applicant or speak in support of the application. And then we'll be hearing from anyone, if any, who wishes to speak in opposition to this particular application. We have, as evidence of the hearing, the application, which I've just summarized. We have the February 21st, 2021 application by John and Tammy Carpenter, and a statement that they want to have the deck because we love our yard and want to stay in Milton, enjoy the community, the education, and the outdoor environment. We have a denial letter from Mr. Prondak. It's dated 10/29/2020 for the reasons set forth in the application. Strike it in the advertisement, which I've read. And we have a plot plan of the subject property. It's by Robert E. Hannigan and Associates. They're of Milton, Massachusetts. The plot plan is dated August 14th, 2020 and updated as of October 12, 2020. And it shows the subject property, the house, location of the house on the lot, and the proposed new deck. So we're conducting this hearing pursuant to the Zoom system this evening, and we look forward to having a successful technical application heard this evening. So Mr. and Mrs. Carpenter, are you present here?
Mrs. Carpenter is, Mr. Carpenter is not.
Well, I can tell you that's not unusual. Well, welcome to the Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell us about your application and why you're seeking to put on the deck, and talk about perhaps the materials that you're going to construct the deck out of and all of that, and whether you've had an opportunity to speak to some of your abutting neighbors and what they have to say about this application.
Certainly. So my name is Tammy Carpenter. I moved here with my husband and my kids about almost 11 years ago now. And we were drawn to Milton by exactly what I put kind of in that application. Not only is it close to the highway system and the cities, so we can get around to both of our work locations, has great schools, but it's mostly the beautiful open green spaces. And that is why I would love to add a deck to be able to access my backyard other than going through my laundry room on a different floor, and just be able to enjoy the yard and entertaining so much more. We're a little bit limited, as you can probably see on the plot plans, on one side by the bulkhead that exists there. And so that is the main reason that we were pushing a little bit more to the left, which is the reason for seeking the variance on the side yard setback. And then in addition to that, it creates an opportunity for us to access both the front and the backyards from the deck space. So that's kind of why we're seeking the variance that we are. I have not gotten written feedback from my neighbors, but I have spoken to all of my immediate neighbors on all sides. So I have the Gildersons who are on the opposite side. They have no issues with it. My neighbor across the street, Mrs. Ferreira, had no issues with it. Jason, I can never pronounce his last name, Sangalis, at Eagle Farms.
Sanatellis.
Sanatellis, thank you.
Yeah, we know Jason.
I figured you would. And he's very supportive of it. And then the neighbors that would probably be the most affected are the Martinellis, and Joe and Kathy Martinelli had no issues with it either. So everybody has verbally, at least in conversation with me, said that they are fine with it. A few of the neighbors kind of that spread out that aren't directly adjacent to us have also expressed support for us, but I have not received any written letters.
Okay. Is it fair to say that nobody has expressed to you any substantial reservations about the deck?
None that they're willing to express to me.
Okay, well, maybe you're just a very persuasive young lady.
I would love to think that.
Why don't you just tell us of what the deck is going to be constructed, and is there going to be a railing around the deck, or just give us some idea and indicate whether maybe the deck is going to be stay natural, or is it going to be painted? And if it's going to be painted, is the painting colors, are they consistent with the color scheme of the residents? And
Sure. So the design of the deck is not 100% finalized, but my vision for it would be to use a composite material such that it would be very low maintenance. In terms of the railings, absolutely there'd be railings around it. My desire is to have a railing system consistent with what you might see more often or frequently, I think, on the Cape, where it doesn't obstruct views and has more of the horizontal wiring. Cabling probably is a better word for that. And in terms of colors, I would absolutely, I'm a pretty simple person. So I would be looking to make it seem as natural as possible.
Let me ask you whether you have some reasonable estimate as to when your I'll call them preliminary plans for the deck are going to be completed. And the reason I ask that is we generally, if we grant the relief requested, we tie the relief into a specific plan so we know what we're adopting. And then you construct the deck in accordance with that plan, and then the building inspector would know what he's inspecting and that it's been approved and all of that.
Sure, sure. Well, our original plan was to have the construction begin in the middle of June. However, that particular contractor has since backed out on us. So we are back to the drawing board right now. We are in conversations with 2 contractors, and they're not committing to timing, but they're looking at preliminary September, October beginning of work. So it opens up a little bit of time, I think, for us to finalize that, but we would certainly need to have something drawn up and finalized by the end of the summer for sure.
Well, part of the problem is that what we like to do and what you should want is to have this application decided fairly quickly. And the board is inundated with 40B applications, as you probably know. Mm-hmm. And one of the difficulties is that if we have to extend out into multiple hearings, that can certainly delay the issuance of the variance that you need. And if you get the variance, then we have to write a decision. And since all of the board members are overly involved with the 40B applications, that's taking a little longer. It usually takes 2 or 3 weeks, but sometimes it's stretching out there for 4 or 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then when we get that, we have to get it signed by all the board members, and then it has to get filed with the town clerk. And then there's a 20-day appeal period before which you can get your building permit. So it's very much in your best interest if you're going to get the relief that you go through this process much sooner rather than later.
Right.
So and what we can do is we'll let the hearing proceed and see how it goes, but we could give you a period of time perhaps to file reasonably definitive plans that substantially show what the deck is going to look like. So
well, I think we have something on file that I provided to Beverly that was, their architectural drawings. Probably the only difference from the drawings and what I'm describing is the style of the railings.
Okay.
So when you say reasonably complete, I guess I'd look for a definition of what reasonably is, because in my mind, those feel reasonably complete.
Well, reasonably is defined as what the board says is reasonable.
Okay.
But so one of the difficulties with conducting these hearings onto the Zoom system is we don't have direct access to the case file.
Okay.
I'm here sitting in my law office.
Right.
I've got the basic stuff, but I don't have a whole set of plans to look at. So if you filed plans and you're comfortable with the substance of those plans,
yep,
and whether the spindles on the deck have little designs on them, or whether they're 2 inches or 4 inches, doesn't really make a lot of difference to us.
Okay.
As long as there's something there to protect people from falling off the deck and children from hurting themselves.
Certainly.
So we can certainly tie those in to any decision which we render. And then if indeed you're going to make a change, it's best that you take that up with the building inspector,
right,
the Prondak, and deal with him, because we give him a lot of discretion in this area.
Okay.
Okay. But it's very much in your best interest to have the hearing process closed as quickly as possible, get a variance, get it filed, because by then you're probably going to be into May sometime.
Right.
So let's, do you have anything else you'd like to add in support of your application?
I don't believe I do. Beverly, is there anything on your end that you can think of that maybe you have that I haven't spoken to?
Not a thing. No, the plans, everyone's got the plans. The only thing we talked about were the paper support, but it sounds like you took care of that verbally. There's nothing else. And I'd say the rest is up to the chair and Attorney Gray and Attorney O'Brien.
Okay, then that's great. Let's do this, Mrs. Carpenter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have any questions of you regarding this application. Mr. Frank O'Brien, please. Do you have any questions of Ms. Carpenter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I managed to successfully maneuver my way off of mute, so I'm ahead of the game. I have two very quick questions, and fortunately, I'm able to access the plans that were filed. I have PDFs of them on my screen. So the first question I would have for you is this: based upon the plans, is the size of your deck in substantial conformity with the plans that are filed? In other words, it's not going to be any closer than the requested relief that you've asked for to the side yard?
No, not at all. If anything, if I can come up with a solution around that bulkhead, I would go the other way.
All right. The second question that I would have for you is, in these plans, a specific type of spindle design is provided for. Is it fair to say that, with the possible exception of the railing and spindle design, that your design decisions for the deck have been substantially completed?
Yes.
Okay. I don't recall, and forgive me, did we talk about what it was going to be made out of?
I mentioned I'd like to use a composite material that would be low maintenance, hopefully in a very wood-like color.
Okay, could you be more specific? What color is the house?
My house right now is a kind of a bluish gray color.
So is it fair to say that the deck will be finished in a manner that will comport with the style of the house?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Chairman, the only other point that I would make is that this applicant, not unlike other applicants, appears to be having contractor issues, in the sense that everybody's booked up. One of the things that may bear mention on this and perhaps other applications is the need to begin work within a year of the decision having been issued.
Yeah, I think that is an issue, and of course that's an issue that Mr. Prondak generally deals with. What you have to do, to the best of my knowledge and belief, is if you get the variance and it goes through the appeal period, you have to secure the issuance of a building permit. And that building permit, I think, has to be at least started within a year's period of time. So if you're running into any difficulty, number one, you can come in and get an extension in the time for executing that permit. But also you can start construction in the year if you want. And Mr. Prondak will have discretion as to whether you're completing the project in a reasonable manner, consistent with the ongoing, hopefully ending pandemic, and the currently existing difficulties securing contractors in order to do the work. But
That
I think
makes sense.
Frank is very right in suggesting that that's something you have to be very, very careful of. But if you deal with Mr. Prondak, I think you can work your way around that. And certainly getting the variance sooner rather than later will give you more opportunities to hire and secure the services of the contractor now, even if you're building a little bit later.
Okay.
Frank, is
Thank
that adequate for your purposes?
It's very adequate, Mr. Chairman, and that's all the questions and comments I have.
Okay, great. Mr. Rob Gray. Rob, do you have any questions of Mrs. Carpenter?
Actually, today it's Nick. Rob is my father.
Oh, I'm sorry.
As you well know, but that's all right.
You mentioned your dad at the last hearing. That's why
I know that's it. Believe me, I would make that mistake myself if. Anyway, Mr. O'Brien asked most of my questions. I would just I think it might help with the record if we could establish a little bit more why it would help not to have the variance granted. In other words, that you're asking for something like 1.4 feet of extra space sort of on the left side of the deck as seen from the house, from the
Correct.
right closer to the property line. So if you built your deck so that it was 12 feet from the property line, you wouldn't need a variance. And what I'm trying to drill down to is precisely why the deck is better in the design that it is rather than moving it over. And you spoke a little bit about a bulkhead. Can you elaborate on that some more so we get some material on the record about it?
Sure. So I was trying to avoid having a long, narrow deck, and on the opposite side, not the side yard side that I'm seeking the variance on, I have the deck right now going right up to the bulkhead space, going it down into the basement. I did not want to cover that space because it does serve as a second egress from my basement. So I have not explored moving that bulkhead or reconfiguring it. And like I said, if that does become an option for me, then I could shift such that my deck would be within the limitations of the 12-foot side yard setback.
But basically positioning the deck where you've designed it allows you to be able to get out of your basement. Is that just to be
yes.
Right? The way without having to change your foundation or right? Okay.
Correct.
And the other how is there any benefit towards the front of the street side of the deck towards having that variance granted? In other words, when I look at the plans, it appears that there's a staircase that leads towards the front yard. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is the second benefit, is to have the access point to the front yard and the backyard. I have young children and pets, and the quicker I can get to both places, I feel like it's better for everybody.
And if you cut 1.6 feet off of the width of the staircase leading to the front yard, I don't know whether your staircase would qualify under the code, but it certainly would be less useful. Is that fair to say? That
is fair to say. And I didn't think it was possible to build a staircase narrower than what it is drawn as.
And my last question is just to confirm that you spoke with the Martinellis on the left side of your house and that they're both okay with it.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I've spoken to Kathy. I have not spoken directly to Joe.
Okay. And did they see the plans?
They did. I gave them a copy of the plot plans.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gray. I have no further questions of the applicant. Let me see, is there anybody present this evening virtually who wishes to speak in support of Mrs. Carpenter's request for a variance? Bev, is there any such person?
We have no hands up, John. Chair.
Let me ask whether there's any person present who either has questions of Mrs. Carpenter or otherwise wishes to speak in opposition to this application for variance?
We have no hands up.
Okay, great. So, Mrs. Carpenter, unless you have something further to add, we'll end the evidence portion of this hearing. Is that fine with you?
That's fine with me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. So we're going to end the evidence portion of this particular application and discuss the application here and now and vote on the application. Mr. O'Brien, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that the application was very well presented. I think that it will be a tasteful addition to the home. We don't usually get applications with decks in such detail. Having said that, I do believe that the decision can be written in such a way as to grant the building inspector sufficient latitude and flexibility in terms of a detail to width the railing. So given all that, given how this board has granted such applications many times in the past, I'd be prepared to vote yes on this.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Mr. Nick Gray, please.
Thanks. I second Mr. O'Brien's comments. With respect to the railing, I would merely add, if I understand what Mrs. Carpenter is proposing as a possible alternative to the railing as drawn, I think maybe this is a question. It's fair to say that the wire, the sort of stainless steel wire thing that you're talking about would be less visual impact than the what are they called? The spindles that you've got there now. So I'm comfortable. I agree with Mr. O'Brien that I think the plans are more detailed than we typically get, and that any railing change from what's pictured is likely to be less of a visual impact and therefore less objectionable, theoretic, presumably to any neighbors. So I would tend to support the application.
Okay, I agree with my colleagues. I think Mrs. Carpenter here has presented a compelling application. The deck is a substantial improvement to the house and certainly for the benefit of for the use and enjoyment of the property by the family. Mrs. Carpenter has done a wonderful job going around speaking to all of the neighbors and showing them the plans, and there were no objections. Not only, I think there are no objections, everyone indicated a favorable intent towards this particular application. And I agree with both Mr. O'Brien and Mr. Gray that the spindle aspect of this is not a substantial element of the application, and the plans that are on file are sufficient in dimensions for us to grant the variance and leave an element of discretion as to the spindles so that they're substantially as shown on the plans. And Mr. Prondak deals with that type of issue very, very frequently. So I intend to vote for this particular variance. It's the bulkhead is indeed a problem, and when Ms. Carpenter started indicating that she wanted to try to look into moving the bulkhead, I started to shudder. That's a very expensive endeavor that can be worked around very conveniently by well-drawn plans and the type of the position of the deck as shown on the present plans. And the last thing we want to do is have a substantial construction consisting of jacking of the foundation and possibly cracking the foundation and moving that. That's can be an enormous expense and it could further delay the construction of the deck. So I don't think that's necessary. So all those in favor of granting the request for a variance so that the proposed deck is as shown on the plans and is in substantial conformity with the plans with some discretionary language regarding the spindles in the building inspector. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 So congratulations, Mrs. Carpenter, on your variance. We will do our utmost here to get this decision out as soon as we can, 40Bs notwithstanding. And I think you did a wonderful job on the application without being represented by council, and going around to all the neighbors was critically important. I just want to remind you, as Ms. Sutton will, as well as our building commissioner, that once the variance is signed and issued, we'll send a copy to you. But the original is going to be filed with the clerk of the town of Milton, and there's a 20-day appeal period. And once that concludes with no appeal, then the variance will become effective. And just be sure that the variance is recorded with the Registry of Deeds. And Mr. Prondak and Beverly can be of assistance to you, telling you where and how to file and what the approximate filing fee is. It's critically important because your variance will lapse if you don't record it. So it's best to do it earlier rather than later. And if you fail to do it, you could run into some problems with the title to your house, and that's the last thing you want to have happen. So congratulations on your on the granting of the variance for your new deck.
Very much, gentlemen. I appreciate the support.
Great, and give our best to Mr. John Carpenter, and you can tell him you did a wonderful job and you saved the day.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks a lot. Anyone want to take a run at this one?
I'll take it, John.
Okay, great.
It'll be easy enough.
Thank you very much. Okay. I have shortly after 8 o'clock, and Bev, are we all set for our second hearing of the Spiegels present and Mr. Corcoran?
It looks like it. Yes, everyone's present.
Okay, good. I just don't have access to them on my screen here.
Oh,
so
sure. Yes.
I don't know.
Yep. Ned, and it looks like both Mr. and Mrs. Spiegel.
Okay, that's great. Ned, are you all set to proceed on this application?
I am, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. We're going to call to order our second and final hearing of the evening. This is the application of Matthew and Kathleen Spiegel of 15 Cliff Road in Milton. This is an application which is dated February 12th, 2021. And the applicants are seeking to build a 23-foot by 23-foot second-story addition above the existing detached garage, and to build an 18-foot by 30-foot two-story addition connecting the now detached garage to the main house at the rear of the property. The property is located in a Residence C zoning district. This particular home was built in 1925 as a single-family home, and it is currently in conformity with the zoning bylaw with respect to use and dimension. We have a plot plan dated November 11th, 2020, which shows that the additions would cause the home to be situated at a distance of 10 foot 4 inches from the rear property line, when 30 feet are normally required by section 61 of the bylaw. I'll summarize the advertisement. We also have, as part of the hearing tonight, we have the application. We have the denial letter by Mr. Prondak dated January 21, 2021. We have an addendum to the application that's filed by Attorney Corcoran, containing various attachments, including a couple of attachments which were filed, I believe, today with respect to the application. One, a photograph of the frontage showing the rock outcroppings at the frontage of the property, and a online map showing the subject property being surrounded by various properties that are marked in a reddish color, indicating that all of those particular owners have filed assents to this particular application. Mr. Corcoran has also provided us with a discussion of the proposed variance request and his conclusion. Also filed with the application are letters from neighbors. If you'll just bear with me. Yes, and they're all, some of them are in different forms. There's the first, let me just run through these. I'm not going to read these verbatim unless I put everyone to sleep, but the first is dated December 29th, 2020. It's from Deb and Dan. It looks like it's Bud, B-U-D-D. Buddy. Thank you. Of 2 Norway Road. They live directly across the street from the Spiegels. They're enthusiastically supporting this application. They've looked at the plans. They think they'll be the beneficiaries of a new view from their home, and they're looking forward to the transformation. They want the Spiegels to remain in the neighborhood. They say it's an exceptionally stable neighborhood. It's tight-knit. And Katie and Matt and their children are important members of the particular community, and they do not want them to have to look elsewhere for a home in order to accommodate their growing family. So we thank the buddies for their particular letter of support. We have a January 9th, 2021 letter from Chuck and Diane Keegan of 18 Cliff Road. They write as an abutter to this property and urge favorable consideration. The Spiegels are a wonderful family. They've enjoyed the Spiegels as neighbors. The Spiegels are extremely considerate, have always kept their property in excellent condition. They have reviewed the plans with the Keegans, and we think that the renovation is tasteful and will enhance not only the applicant's property, but also the neighborhood. So we thank the Mr. and Mrs. Keegan for their letter of support. We have a letter dated September 22nd, 2020 from Beth and Robert Neville. They are pleased to support this application. They have reviewed the architectural plans, and they believe that the plan is the only possible solution to enlarge the home in order to accommodate a family of 4 people. And they would be making the same changes if they lived in the Spiegel's property. The addition will fill a gap between the 2 structures, make the yard quieter, and provide a buffer zone. They believe that the added height will not affect anybody, and because there are a few windows that face in that direction. They're pleased with the choice of matching brick for the extension and the attention to historical detail for this 1927 structure. They believe that this addition will enhance the value of the home since it is a very small home and has no basement, and therefore it will increase the value of all of the surrounding homes, and therefore they enthusiastically support the application for a variance. So we certainly thank Mr. and Mrs. Neville. We have a letter from Jillian and Doug Carlson of 28 Cliff Road in Milton. They write as abutters to the property. They urge favorable consideration. They've known the Spiegels for 5 years. They're wonderful neighbors, very active in the Cliff Norway neighborhood and in the Milton community as a whole. Their kids attend Glover School, and they all participate in many extracurricular activities, including Milton Youth Hockey, Milton Soccer, and Milton National Baseball. Katie and Matt are members of the Wollaston Golf Club, where they each hold positions on the membership committee and the house committee. Katie has been part of several initiatives to improve the community, particularly regarding her involvement with the Milton Playground Planners, a group that raises funds to renovate all public playgrounds in Milton. They've met with Matt and Katie and they've reviewed the plans. They think everything is tastefully done and will enhance the property and the immediate neighborhood. So to Jillian and Doug Carlson, we send our thanks. We have a letter from Karen Friedman Hanna and Bill Hanna of 3 Norway Road in Milton. It's dated December 28th, 2020. They write as direct abutters to the property and they urge favorable consideration of the application. The Spiegels have met with the Hannas and have showed the plans. They think that the renovation will not only enhance the Spiegels property, but the entire neighborhood, and particularly the area in proximity to the property. They wholeheartedly support the project and urge the board to grant approval so that the construction can begin. So we thank Karen and Bill Hanna for their letter of support. We have a letter dated December 27th, 2020 from Steve and Nikki Nelson of 481 Elliott Street in Milton. They write as abutters to the property to urge favorable consideration. The Spiegels have met with the Nelsons, showed them the plans, and we think that everything is tastefully done and will enhance the property and the immediate neighborhood. So thanks to the Nelsons for writing to the Board of Appeals. And we have another letter dated November 2nd, 2020. It's from Anthony Stewart of 10 Cliff Road in Milton. And he writes, as the abutters to the Spiegels, we support their application for the improvements to their home. We are familiar with their plans and feel that they will enhance the property as well as the surrounding neighborhood. So we thank both Tim Kelleher and Anthony Stewart at 10 Cliff Road, Milton, Massachusetts. So I think we thank everyone for submitting these particular letters of support. Let me just briefly note, as I did in the first hearing, we'll hear from the applicant, who are represented by Attorney Edward J. Corcoran of Quincy and who lives in Milton, Massachusetts. And then we'll hear from any other persons present who wish to speak in support of the application. We'll listen to anyone who has questions of the application, and we'll also hear from any person, if any, who wishes to speak in opposition to the application. We're conducting this hearing under the Zoom system as usual, and everything's working reasonably well. So Mr. Corcoran, welcome back to the Board of Appeals. A rather long preamble, but good to see you again, and we're delighted to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Mr. Gray and Mr. O'Brien. Nice to be back, and joined by Katie and Matt Spiegel, who are the owners of the property at 15 Cliff Road and the applicants in this case. I'll be brief. We did submit a fairly full set of architectural plans for the board's consideration. As the letters noted, this is an older dwelling. It's a 1920s style dwelling with no basement. It sits on a rocky outcropping at the corner of Cliff and Norway Road. You can see from the Google Earth image that I submitted this morning that there is a significant amount of ledge and it rises some 16 steps from the sidewalk up to the front door at that location. It's a smallish house, no basement. The ledge really probably prohibited development of a full basement. And there is a detached garage, which as currently configured is conforming to zoning. I thought it was particularly interesting that one of the abutters, whose letter you read, at 5 Cliff, really touched about the improvements that this proposed 2-story addition will make in terms of their quality of life from a noise and visual perspective. But the plan is to infill between the two buildings, the main dwelling and the detached garage, build above the garage with additional room. That's what brings it within out of compliance with zoning, because now instead of an accessory detached building only 10 feet from the rear, now you've got to be the full 30 feet. So as you can tell from the letters, the Spiegels have quite a relationship with all of their abutters. It's quite a tight neighborhood. And I think as I've met the Spiegels, they were really looking at moving to another part of town and didn't want to leave, needed to expand the house for a growing family. They have 2 young children. And they wanted to remain in that neighborhood, and it's clear that the neighbors really wanted them to stay. And so I think they worked together to arrive at a set of plans that would be acceptable to the neighbors. And the neighbors agree would enhance sort of the overall value of the neighborhood and would help the Spiegels remain in their house. So really from a hardships perspective, I think I didn't lay it out as directly as I might have in the written material. But certainly the ledge, the existence of the ledge, the rock within the property would make it difficult to do much else to expand this dwelling within the compliant expansion within zoning. And it makes more sense, I think, in this case, to connect to the existing garage and really sort of bring those 2 structures together into one. Certainly, doesn't appear that there'd be any substantial detriment to the neighborhood, particularly with the level of support that has been generated among the neighborhood. And I think it's generally compliant with the goals of the zoning bylaw for the town. And so, with that, I would pause here, open it up to the board for questions, and appreciate your time.
Great. Mr. Gray, do you have any questions of Mr. Corcoran?
You're muted, Nick.
No, I can't quite click the unmute button fast enough. No, I don't think I have any questions other than to say just to confirm from it's your opinion, Mr. Corcoran, from the architectural drawings that basically it's going to be one consistent architectural style all across with the addition and then tying it into the garage.
That's right.
And the garage is not moving its location, right? It's staying in exactly the same place. So what would be causing the problem is the connection now, because it's part of the dwelling, it would require 30 feet.
Correct.
But as far as like the abutting neighbors would be concerned, there's no additional intrusion from what's there currently. It's 10.4 feet or whatever the number is now, and it will be in the future. So it's that and the soil conditions, I think, are both very important elements. But I don't have any other questions.
Okay, great. Mr. O'Brien, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Mr. Corcoran. Good to see you again. Mr. Corcoran, is it fair to say that given the unique size and shape as well as the geological underpinnings of this particular lot, that this is just about the only cost-effective and logical way to expand the current building?
I think it is. It is quite the topography is quite significant for such a small lot. The driveway as it comes up from Norway, from that corner of cliff in Norway, really swings.
Ned, I lost you for a minute as you leaned away from the microphone. Sorry.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I think, the topography is really quite significant out there. And it dawned on me after I met with the Spiegels the other day. And as I walked the site, it was really quite something. But if you follow the driveway, it's really quite a swing up the hill and into the rear of the property. And so any improvement outside of connecting to the garage would be difficult physically. I think obviously when they were built in the 20s, they picked the high flat spot. And so I think connecting the house to the garage is sort of connecting in the flattest area. Otherwise, you're really talking about issues with topography as well as these issues with the ledge, the rock.
Thank you. And I believe I saw a reference in one of the letters to the addition being completed in, well, I don't know, it's like I don't know if the style is Tudor or let's just say it's got a unique style. I assume it's going to be completed in the same unique style. It's not a clapboard colonial, shall we say.
That's right. I think the last sheet of the architecturals that I included is a colored sheet showing exterior renderings, and it is unique. It is different than many other of the houses. So I think that uniqueness is something that at least some of the neighbors have thought is of significance.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you, Frank. I have no questions of the applicant at this time. Let me see if there's anybody present who does have questions of Mr. Corcoran with respect to this application. Is there any such person present?
We have 3 attendees, but no one has their hand up.
Okay. Let me
Excuse me.
ask whether there's anybody present who wishes to speak in support of this application, who has not previously submitted a letter in support of this application.
I will mimic what I said. There are 3 attendees and there are no hands up.
Okay. Let me ask the final question, whether there's anybody present who wishes to speak in opposition to this application for a variance.
No, it doesn't look like it.
So there's nobody who wishes to speak?
No.
Okay, Mr. Corcoran, do you have any closing remarks, or are you content with your application?
Quit while I'm ahead, Mr. Chair.
All right, I think that's always that's a good philosophy. So we're going to call to a conclusion the evidentiary portion of this particular application for variance, and we'll open it up for discussion so that the board can consider and vote on this application this evening. Mr. O'Brien, do you want to be heard first?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I want to congratulate Mr. Cochran because I've been on the board for a number of years, and I have turned down 2 of these in my years on the board. This is the first one that I don't intend to turn down in terms of a connection. I think it's very well done. The architectural drawings, the topography of the lot and everything else. Really, this is the only logical way that this could be done. And as always, I thank you for your usual fine job in guiding the board through this application.
Thank you, Frank. Mr. Gray, please.
I second Mr. O'Brien's comments. I think I love the project. I think that not only will it be a benefit to the neighborhood, but it frankly, it allows the preservation of the existing structures, which, you know, if the other option, I suppose, would be to knock everything down and build something new. And I think this is a good solution and clearly meets the statutory requirements for a variance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gray. I agree with my colleagues. I think Mr. Corcoran has presented a powerful and compelling application for a variance. It's a beautiful home, and the improvements suggested will not only enhance the home and make it livable and enjoyable for the Spiegels and their growing family. It's a terrific addition to the neighborhood, as witnessed by the unanimous support of all of the surrounding abutters. I appreciated Mr. Corcoran's photograph, specifically focusing on the ledge and focusing on the fact that every abutting property from every direction approves in a sense to this particular application for a variance. So I certainly intend to vote in favor of this application. All those in favor of granting the application for a variance with the usual
Aye.
conditions for variances, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, Mr. Corcoran, congratulations on your successful outing before the Board of Appeals. Do you have any idea as to construction issues and all of that that we heard from the first applicant?
I think they're ready to go.
That's what I suspected.
If it's helpful to the board, I'd be happy to prepare a draft of a decision for the board's review.
I certainly think that's a fabulous suggestion because both Mr. Gray, Mr. O'Brien, and I are involved with ongoing 40B hearings that appear to be never ending. And
I'm on one tomorrow night, so
well,
watching all of you with interest.
well, this will be really, it would be helpful as an accommodation to the board, but it'll be a tremendous service, I think, to your clients, particularly if they have a builder locked up and locked in and ready to go, because we'd hate to see that builder go someplace else because it took the board a month or more to prepare the variance. So unless Mr. O'Brien and Mr. Gray, do you have any objections to Mr. Corcoran submitting a draft consideration, a draft decision for the consideration of the board in order to expedite the relief granted?
No.
None.
Okay, great. So thank you very much, Mr. Corcoran. That's terrific, and we look forward to receiving the draft decision. And I certainly promise you and the Spiegels that we will circulate it at warp speed to see if we can accommodate everybody's needs.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're very excited.
So congratulations on your application and your variance. I'm not going to go through the usual discussion of recording your variance and all of that. And you're in good hands with Mr. Corcoran, and he'll make sure that your relief is properly secured and recorded. Let me just ask Ms. Sutton, trustee clerk. Bev, I don't think we have anything else to come before the board. Is that fair to say?
No, other than who will be writing this?
Well, Mr. Corcoran is going to write it, and he's going to submit a draft decision to you, and you'll circulate that to the three of us, and we'll each review it. Maybe make a
so that's how we're going to do it. Okay.
Here or there, and get those
Alrighty.
back to Mr. Corcoran, and we can get the document in final form. My guess, the way this application has been presented, the suggested additions will either be non-existent or will be few and far between. But all of the board members will review the draft decision, and
So that's how we'll leave it. Okay, perfect. Thank
So-
you.
if we have nothing else to come before the board, I want to thank Mr. Corcoran and the Spiegels for attending tonight, and wish everyone a good evening, and thank you for attending the hearing this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Chairman.
Talk to you. This is great, and so the board will be adjourned. And
Thank you.
Good night.
thank you.
All.
Good night, all.